I have shared my screen. Is it visible to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Fine. Fine. Fine.
Yes, sir.
Fine. So, what we have discussed in the last class is the dynamic and static interface, and we have looked at that if the DSI it moves to the lower level, then a optimization can be done at the much of the higher level. Now, let's look at the certain the characteristics, the instruction set architecture, certain characteristics that the instruction set architecture should they reflect. Now we have there are there are three different types of computing: the desktop computing, the server computing, and the personal mobile device or embedded applications. Now the instruction set architecture on each of these focus on certain certain part of the instruction set. Now let's look at the where the emphasis is given on each of this type of computing. Let's look at the desktop computing. The desktop computing are computational intensive, and the more emphasis is given on the performance of the program with integer and floating point data type. So in a desktop computing, the instruction set architecture give more emphasis on improving the performance of the integer and floating point operations, and this improves the performance of the entire the system. Now in the desktop computing, the emphasis is not given to the size of the code. And if you look at in the spec benchmark that we have discussed, that in the all generation of the spec benchmark, the emphasis is not given on the size of the code. What will be the size of the code on how to improve the functions. Next is the server computing, or the server today. They primarily focused for database. So we had a database server, we had a file server. There are a server for web applications, and there are many servers where time sharing applications are run. Now in this server, the primary focus or the more emphasis on given on the integer in character string operations, rather than giving the emphasis on the floating point operation. But in all the server computing, you will find the floating point operations are still available on these all servers. Now if you look at the personal mobile device and embedded computing, the more emphasis on this on the PMDs and the embedded computing is the cost and the energy. So how to reduce the cost of the device and how to minimize the energy consumption of the device, that is the more emphasis is given on this. Now so in this, if you reducing the cost and the energy, then the code size is important, because less memory is both cheaper and lower the energy. Look at in a desktop computing, the size of the code emphasis is not given on the size of the code. Look at if we had a different instruction set architecture for a particular instructions, the size of the code that will be generated in each instruction set architecture will be different. Probably you might have studied a accumulator based the processor and stack based processor and register processor. Actually we'll discuss on this, and we'll see that how a specific architecture will determine the size of the code. So in a personal mobile device and embedded computing, the size of the code is more important. So size of the code is important because if you look at the devices itself has a less memory. So code is important because less memory, if the memory is less, then it becomes cheaper, and the code size of the code is less. So obviously it will take a less amount of energy for computation of the code. Now some class of instructions. Now in this PMDs, the personal mobile device and embedded computing, some class of instruction, for example, the floating point instructions may be optional to reduce the chip cost. So in this, where the in the PMDs and the embedded, certain instruction may not be available to reduce the cost of the chip. Now let's classify. Let's classify the instruction set architecture, and the primary between the different instruction set architecture is the internal storage in a processor. That is the primary difference. So you will differentiate among these different instructions architecture primarily on the basis of the storage inside the processor. Now, the instruction set architecture can be broadly classified into three types. It can be a stack-based system, it can be accumulator, or it on the register general purpose register. It's called the register the processor. So let's look at what happens in a stack-based system. Now, in a stack, the both operands are implicitly on the top of the stack. So we know how the operations, if I want to perform an operation on a stack, the operand must be available in the stack. Then we retrieve both the operand from the stack, perform the operation, and write the result back into the stack. So if it in a stack back, the operand must be implicitly available on the stack. Now, in case of a accumulator, the one of the operand is implicitly in the accumulator. So if you want to perform any operation, then we'll assume that one of the operand is available in the accumulator, and this accumulator is a special general purpose register. So you perform the operations, one of the operand is there in the accumulator, and another operand has to explicitly specified. So you perform the operation, the result is stored back again in the accumulator. Now next is the general purpose register. General purpose register architecture, and in the general purpose register architecture, all operands are explicitly specified either in the register or in the memory location. So you can specify the operand, both the operand may be in the register, both operand may be in the memory location, one of the operand may be there in the register, the other operand there may be in the memory location, and the result can be stored back either in the register or either in the memory location. So all operands are explicitly specified in the register. Now this general purpose registers we can further classified into three types. It can be a register memory. In case a register memory architecture, one operand is in the register and one in the memory. So one operand in register, the other in the memory, and the class of computers that supports the register memory is the IBM 360 370 model, Intel family, the Motorola 68000 family. A memory where both the operands are in the memory. One example is the VAX. In a VAX, both operand can be there in the memory. VAX actually supports many type of operation. Both can be in the register, both can be in the memory. One can be register, another can be memory. It supports all type of operation. And next is the register, where and the register we also call this architecture is a load and store architecture. Here all the operands except for those in the load and store instructions are in the register. So in case of a register architecture, all the operands are available in the register other than the two instructions. That means in every instructions other than the load and the store instructions, the operand. In case of a load and store instructions, the memory is involved. This is the register or the load and store architecture. There are this load and store are the only two instructions where the memory is involved, and in no other instruction the memory is involved. The example is the SPARC, the MIPS, precision architecture, the PowerPC, and all these belongs to the load and store the architecture. Now if you look at the early computers, either they are stack based or the accumulator based. Now all the computers which are designed after, or all the new architectures designed after the 1980 are the load and store architecture. So if you look at after all instruction set architecture designed after 1980 are the load and store architecture. Now if if the load and star, then what is the reason that the load and store architecture are more popular? Let's look at what is the reason for which this general purpose architecture or the general purpose register or register architecture are more popular after 1980s. So this is the example of three instruction set uh, architecture that we have discussed. Now, if you look at the first one is a stack base where the all operands are present in the top of the stack. So you retrieve from the top of the stack, perform the operations, and again write it back to the top of the stack. Now, in case of an accumulator based, one of the operand is there in the accumulator. The other one you read either from the memory or from the register, then perform the operation and store the result back into the accumulator. Now, if you look at the next three are general purpose GPR architecture, or it's a register memory, register or load and architecture, and the memory. In case of a register memory, one of the operand is there in the register, the other operand is there in the memory, and perform the result of perform the required operation and store the result back into the register. In case of a register, in case of a register architecture, both the operand are there in the register. So it's both the operands are there in the register. The required operation performed and the result is again returned back into the register. And if you look at the memory, in case of a memory, the both the operands are there in the memory. If you look at both the operands are there in the memory, you perform the desired operations and the result is written back again into the memory. Now, so we had a different type of architecture based on the based on the internal storage in a processor. Now let's execute a instruction in this architecture. Let's see what is the size of the code that is generated in each of these instructions. Now let's execute this instruction. This instruction is a plus b, and add a plus b. A is a variable and b is also a variable, and store the result back into the register C. Now let's look at the size of the code and the way the operations are performed in each of these instruction set, in each classification of these instruction set architecture. Now, if I am to perform in a stack base, if I'll perform this one in a stack base, then I need to push the operand A and operand B onto the stack. So push A, push B, then you add the operation, perform an add operation. Now you want to perform the add operations, then you retrieve two elements from the top of the stack, perform the add operation, and write the result back into the register. So write the result back into the stack. So the number of the code generated is the size of the code is 4. Now let's look at the accumulator base. In case of accumulator base, the one of the operand must have to be stored in the accumulator. So let's store the operand A. So load A. So it is loaded into the accumulator. Then add B. So add B says add the content of the accumulator to B and store the result back. Then store C, stores results back into the accumulator. So the size of the code here is 3. Now in a register memory, one of them in the register, the other one there in the memory, and you perform the operation. Now, so one of them in the register, so you read load A into the register R1, then you perform the add operation. So the add operation says that the add the content of the register A to the memory location B and write the result back into the register R3. Now then store it back into the either store back into the register. Now it says now it is there in the register R3. The content is added up and stored in the register R3, but it says that it must be stored back in the register in the memory location the C. So it says store the content of the register R3 in the variable C, which is there in somewhere in the memory location. Now let's look at the register or the load and store architecture. In case of a load and store architecture, both the operand must be present in the register. So you read it from the memory location, store it in register R1, read the memory location where B is stored and load it in the register R2 and perform the addition operation R1 plus R2, store in the register R3, and the content, the register R3 is again stored in the memory location where the variable C is pointing to. So if you look at the size of the size of the code here is 3. Now if you look at the memory, now let's look at what happens in a memory. In case of a memory, let's look at, this is one memory A, sorry. The load add memory location A with the memory location B and store it back into C. Now let's look at the size of the code here. It requires only one instruction. The memory is more compact, and from the density wise it is less dense. It's more compact. It needs to perform the same operation. It needs only a single instruction. But if you look at the load and store architecture, it takes the 4 instruction. Now the after 1980s, that is why I say the general purpose architecture are more popular, and there are some reasons for which the general purpose architecture are more popular. Now, two major reasons for the emergence of the general purpose architecture, we call now from here onwards we can call it as a GPR, general purpose architecture. One is the registers are faster than the memory. We know that of all the memories that available to a processor, the registers are faster. Since the registers are faster, then if your instructions are present in the register and the operands are present in the register, then it will take a less time to fetch the operand, and the execution of the program also take a less time. So registers are faster than the memory, and it will take a less time for the program to execute if the operands are there in the register. Then registers are more efficient for the compiler to use than other form of internal storage. So if now, if you look at some compiler, you have a program and you execute the same program in a different compiler with the same machine, you will find some changes in the performance of changes in the execution time of the program. So you'll find the performance of the system changing with the change in the compiler. So it all depends upon how efficient the compilers are going to use the register available to them. Now, registers also can hold variables. Now, when the registers can hold variables, then what are the advantage that you are going to gain when the register hold variables? Now, when the registers hold variables, then memory traffic reduces. Now, if you look at a specific instruction, a specific operand may be required by the more than one instructions. Now, if it is there in the register, then they can directly access the operands from the register, so reducing the memory traffic. So first I will take let's say I will take instructions. Let's say this A minus B. Sorry, let's take A into B minus B into C minus A into D. Now, if you look at the, if you have the compilers can efficiently use the registers. Now let's look at if you had a B here and B here. Now So every time this, if I'll to compute this sub expression, and if I'll compute the sub expression, you need the value of the B, and if the B is present in the register, for computing this sub expression, you can access the register, and computing this sub expression, you can use the same register. Now, if this will be, if this expression is evaluated in a stack, then A has to be pushed, B has to be pushed, then again the B has to be pushed. Look at B is already present on the stack, but the computation on a stack computer, the operand which are present on the stack will be invisible during the computational time. So when this sub expression is to be evaluated, then the B and C again has to be pushed. Here we have already pushed B, and to evaluate this expression again we have to push B if we are to evaluate it by means of a stack. But if you are using a general purpose register, then we know that the B is already there. Then you need not have to access the B from the memory. You can directly refer from the register, so reduces the memory traffic. Not only it reduces the memory traffic, it can also speeds up the program, since the access to the registers are faster than the access to the memory. Then the code density improves. Now when you say the code density improves, now you have written a instructions. Let's say that instruction needs the address of the memory location. Now if you specify the address of these memory locations, then they may need to, let's say you had a 2 to power 32 bits the memory. So if this is your memory size, then you need a 32 bit in your instruction to specify one memory location. So let's say A to be, if you specify A, then I need to specify the address of 32 bit. Now if this A will be stored in a register, and I had a 32 registers, then by means of 5 bits I can specify the address of the register. So here 32 bit to specify the memory, and the 5 bit to specify a register. So you require a less number of bits, so the code density also improves if the variables are stored in the register. Then how many registers are sufficient? So we are talking of register can hold the variables, then how many registers sufficient? Now if you look at, we discussed that the register are more efficient for the compiler to use. So to answer the question how many registers are sufficient, it depends on the effectiveness of the compiler, how effectively the compiler can use the register. And uh, the most compilers, they reserve some register for evaluating for expression evaluation. This is what the majority of the compiler does, that to use the available set of register set, uh, the compiler reserves some of the register for expression evaluation, and some register are reserved for passing the parameters, for parameter passing, for expression evaluation, and whatever is remaining, all the remainder to be allocated to hold the variables. Now let's look at, so this is how the compilers are going to use the register. They are use the register for parameter passing. They are using the register for evaluating the expression evaluation, and all the remaining of the registers are allocated to hold the variables. It all depends upon how the compilers are using the registers. And because the model compiler has the ability to use a large number of registers, and this have increased the register count in the recent architecture. And if you look at in more recent architecture, you will find a 32-bit floating point register, sorry, 32 floating point register and 32 integer register. So if so the compilers are depending upon the effectiveness of how the compiler are using the register count is also used. The register count has also increased in the recent instruction set architecture. To measure instruction set characteristics, now let's look at the how the general purpose register architectures are also classified. The two major instruction set characteristics divide the general purpose architecture. One, the number of operand in ALU instruction head. Now, whether the ALU instruction has a two operand or the instruction is two operand, this is one way of classifying the general purpose architecture. The other way of classifying is the number of memory the number of memory address operand in a ALU instructions. How many operand? There are two ways, two major instruction set architect that divides the general purpose register. The number of operands in a ALU instructions and the number of memory address operand in a ALU instruction. Let's look at the number of operand an ALU instruction has. Whether the ALU instruction has a two operand or the ALU instruction has a three operand. The two operand format. In the two operand format, the instruction contains one result operand and two source operand. So there are three operands. In case of a three operand, there are two source operand, and to perform the ALU operation, and the result of the ALU operation is stored in the third operand. So you need three operand. Two of them are source and one of them is destination. And in the two operand format, the one of the operand, it acts as a source as well as a destination of the result. So the in a two operand format, the content the content is lost. In a three operand format, the content of a content is not lost. Suppose if you have written a add instruction with A, B, and C, and these are the two source operand in the destination operand, then the content of the source operand is not lost here. B and C retain. Now, if I write it a two instruct B, the A plus B is added and the result is stored in the destination. If A is my destination, then the previous content of A is lost. So two instruction format, one of the operand act as a both source as well as the destination of the result. So depending upon we had a two operand format or three operand format, the code density for the same program is going to change. If you have a two operand format, they will have a different code density, and if we have a three operand format, we will have a different code density for the same instruction. Then the next is the next way of classifying is the number of memory operand a instruction has. Now this is my add instruction, and this is the instructions whether it is a two operand or a three operand. How many of these operand are memory instructions? So the number of memory operand may vary from none to 3 in the ALU instruction. Let's look at this instruction. This instruction has 3 operand. So it's a 3 operand. That means all the threes can be the memory address. One of them can be memory address. Two of them can be memory address. None of them can also be memory address. So if you look at, I'll take a add, and all of them, both them can be both of them can be in the register, and none of them are referring to the memory. So the number of memory operand may vary from none, that is from the 0 to 3 in the ALU instruction. So now I had so if I'll combine these two, the number of operand and number of memory address operand in the ALU instruction, number of operand in the ALU instructions and the number of memory address operand in the ALU instructions, then I can have 4 different types of architecture. But all the 4 different types of architecture, 7 different type of architecture with 0 address. We have a 0 address, 1 address, 2 address, 3. One of 0 operand, one of the 3 operand, 3 operand with 3 operand. So none of them are 0 memory address, 1, 2, 3, and we have a 2 memory address with 0, 1, 2. So 4 plus 3 is 7. So we can have a 7 different types of architecture. but of these 7 different types, only 4 of them are actually they classified, or actually you'll find a architecture for 3 of them. So let's look at the classifications. The first one is the number of memory address, and the number of memory address and maximum number operand, and the type of the architecture, and what is the available system, example of the available system that falls in this particular architecture. This is number of memory address 0. There's no memory address. That means, and 3 operands. No memory address, and you have a 3 operand. So all of them, or maximum you can 3 operand. That means you can have a 0 operand, 1 operand, 2 operand, and 3 operand. So this belongs to the load and store architecture. So load and store architecture, there is only 2 instructions in the load and store architecture that refer to the memory, that is load and store instruction, and none of the instructions other than the load and store instruction that refer to the memory. So the number of memory reference is 0, and all the ARMs, the MIPS, the PowerPC, the SPARC, they belongs to the load and store architecture. And the you can have one, we can have a 2 operand, and one of the operand that refer to the memory, though that we discussed, is the register memory architecture. And Intel 86, the Motorola 68000, IBM 360, 370, that belongs to the register memory. And we can have a 2 memory address and 2 operand, and 3 memory address and 3 operand. So this belongs to the memory architecture. And the memory architecture are mostly available in the VAX machine. This you have a 2 operand, and both of them they refer to the memory. So it is a VAX with 2 operand format, and we can have a VAX with 3 operand format. So VAX have a multiple types of instructions, and multiple types of the operands are available to the VAX machine. So let's look at the different architectures, the register memory, and the memory architecture, and some of the advantages and disadvantages of each of this architecture. In case of a register architecture, so the number of memory reference in a register architecture is 0, and maximum number of operands it can be 3. So you can have a 0 operand, we can have 1 operand, 2 operand, or 3 operand. The advantage that these instructions are simple instructions, and they are fixed length instruction. In the register architecture, the instruction lengths are fixed. Because the instruction lengths are fixed, the pipelining of such architectures are very easy. This is one of the advantage of having a fixed length instruction, say a fixed length instruction vis-a-vis a variable length instructions. So coding is simple, the simple code generation, and the instruction takes similar number of the clock cycle to use. So when you say similar number of clock cycle, I'm not telling it takes the same number of clock cycle. So it's in the instruction sets are the instruction size are fixed, so it will take very similar number of the clock cycle. But what is the disadvantage is the higher instruction code, the density of the instructions for the same program. You compile the program in the memory architecture, you may generate a less number of instructions than in the register architecture. So the higher instruction count, then instruction set architecture with memory references in the instruction. Higher instruction count, a lower instruction density leads to large program. So here in case the register architecture, the size of the program is more. So given a program, you compile the program in a register architecture, the size of the code generated will be more than the same program compiled on a memory architecture. Now in case of a register memory, the data can be accessed without a separate load instruction. First, the instruction formats tend to be easy to encode and yield a good code density. So this is somewhere between the register architecture and memory architecture. Now here the operands are not equivalent since a source operand in a binary operation is destroyed. So here what it says that one of the in register memory there are two operands. One of them is also destination. The source operand is get destroyed. Encoding in a register and memory address. Each instruction may restricts the number of registers. So here the instruction can have a one register reference. The instruction can have a two register reference. The clock cycle per instruction vary by the depending upon the location of the operand. So if so given an instruction, if the operand of that instruction is there in the memory, then to execute that instruction uh, it will take some number of clock cycles. Let's take again this popular example add. Let's take an add instruction. Suppose you take an add instruction and both A and B are there in the register. So if A and B there in the register, it will take a less number of clock cycle to access A and B. Now if I'll say one of the operand is there in the register, there in the memory. Suppose A or B is there in the memory, so that operand has to fetch from the memory, so it will take a different number of the clock cycle. So the execution of every instructions will take a different number of clock cycle depending upon the location. With the memory architecture, the architecture is the most compact. And most compact, the code generated, the density of the code is very less, so it's more compact and does not waste register for storing the temporary variables. Now, but the disadvantage of this is the large variation in the size of the instructions. So this is one is if you look at register and memory architecture, we can call they are at a two extreme apart. One of them has all the instructions are of fixed size, that the length of the instructions are fixed, and we had a memory architecture where you can have an instruction of different length. Now if we are having an instruction of different length, one disadvantage is the pipelining of such instruction gets difficult. It's hard to pipeline. And large variation in the instruction size, especially for 3 operand instruction. In addition, a large variation in the clock cycle for an instructions, memory access creates another bottleneck. And then this architecture, so if we access a memory, so memory access is as a bottleneck, and this architecture is not as available in the instruction set architecture store architecture. Next, we'll discuss on the memory addressing. Now, memory addressing is how to specify and interpret the memory address. If you look at the all the data are initially present in the memory, then how do you specify the memory address of an object, and how to interpret that the memory address to access an object from the memory?
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, you said in memory the instruction size varies. Can you explain
Yes.
how and why? Like, memory address will be having same, right? Say we are having 32 bits for address for an operand, so
No,
it should still be fixed.
No, can you just can you explain? Can you just repeat the questions once again?
In memory, you said it is mentioned like the instruction size is varying. So
Right.
I just want to know how and why does it vary in this one, and why does not vary in register? Why is it fixed in register? Yeah.
In a register architecture, all instructions are fixed length. For example, is RISC, all instructions are 32 bit. This is fixed. Every instruction is fixed. It's a 32-bit instructions. Okay. In case of memory, these instruction sizes are not fixed. Some instruction are 8-bit, some instruction can be 16-bit, some instruction can be 32-bit. So this is a variable size instruction set. Memory architectures are variable size instruction set, and RISC or the register are fixed size instruction set. Now let's look at the size of the code. Now let's look at, you have all instruction of size of 8. Let's say you had a program where all the instructions are generated are of 8-bit instructions. The instruction size are 8 bits. Now let's say you had let's say the program has 100 instructions. Let's say you had a program, register the memory takes all these instructions that is generated, maybe by virtue of the instruction that you have written, take 8 bits. So the total size is 800 bits. Okay. Now let's look at the, so how many instructions are there? There are 100 instructions, both in the memory bit. Same program, now you do it in a register architecture. In case of a register architecture, all instructions are fixed size, they are all 32 bits. So the size of the memory that they occupy is 100 into 32 bits, so it is 3200 bits. Is clear now?
Yes, sir. I understood that it is in register it is fixed and memory is it's varying. But I am asking why is it so? Why does it vary?
The architecture is so designed. So let's say this is, you had instructions. Let's say there is a instructions. These instructions referring to all the 3 memories. This instruction, this because it can refer all to the right. So 3 are the size of the instruction is going to vary. Now it says one of them is in the memory. So let's say this is in the memory and these 2 are in the register. So what will be the number of bits to specify this register? It will be less than the size of the memory. So what will be the number of bits to specify this register? It will be less than the size of the memory. So size of the instructions is going to vary. It depending upon how the operands are specified, whether the operands in the memory or the operand. Right, got it?
Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Based on like if we have 1, then it will be less than
right.
1 register,
right.
And 2 memory like that. Okay. Okay, understood.
That is why you say. That is why you say zero memory 3 operand 0 memory reference, 3 operand 1 memory reference, 3 operand 2 memory reference. So they here the instruction size is going to vary. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So let's
understood.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So let's look at the memory addressing. So memory addressings are, we know that all the operands resides in the memory, and if want to when the program executes, they need to be accessed from the memory, perform some operation, finally the result has to return back into the memory. Now when you talk of the memory, we are not talking of a 1 byte that we are going to access. You are going to access an object. That object may be a byte, it may be a half word, 16 bit to a 2 byte, it may be a word 32 bit 4 byte, or it may be a double word 64 bit or 8 bytes. We do not know what is the size of the object that we are going to access, which can vary from 1 byte, 2 byte, 4 byte, or 8 byte. 8 byte. Then how do you specify the address of the object? And when you specify the address of the object, then how you are, so when the address is available, then how you are going to interpret that address to access an object. So this is the addressing mechanism is specified by the addressing modes. So let's look at how do you interpret the memory address. First, how the memory address is interpreted. What object when you say how the memory address is interpreted, then what object is accessed as a function of the address and the length. Now you specify the address of the memory location, then what is the size of the object that we are going to access from the address that is being specified from the given address. How are you going to access an object? The object may be 1 byte, 2 byte, 4 byte, or 32 4 byte, or 8 byte. Then how do you going to know that the object is a 1 byte vis-a-vis the object is a 8 byte? Now, if you look at, we are talking of an object with a multiple bytes. If the object has a multiple bytes, then what will be the ordering of the bytes within a large object? Let's discuss first how do you order a bytes within a large object. There are two ways of ordering the bytes in a larger object. One is called the Little Indian the byte order, and the other one is called the Big Indian the byte order. So we call the Little Indian byte ordering or the Big Indian byte ordering if there are multiple number of bytes in an object. I am not talking of bits. I am talking of bytes. The bits, a byte has 8 bits. I am not looking at how the bits are arranged within a byte. I am looking at how the bytes are arranged in a in a object having multiple number of bytes. So let's first discuss the Little Indian Big Indian mechanism addressing. The Little Indian byte order puts the byte whose ordering is at the least significant position in the word or the little. So let's take the example. Let's take an object with the 8 byte, and let's look at how the Little Indian addressing and Big Indian addressing are done. Big Indian addressing mechanism, the bytes are arranged within this 8 bytes. So let's take, this is the 8 byte. Let's take a 8 byte. My object is a 8 byte, and we'll see how the bytes are arranged. So this is my least significant byte. This is the most significant byte. In a Little Indian addressing, the address, look at, I have written 3 zeros. 0 0 0. This is indicates the byte 0 0 0 1, that will indicate byte 1, then byte 2, byte 3, and the byte 7. So 8 bytes. So this says this byte with the begin with the byte with the address 0 0 0 at the LS position, and byte with the address, the 7th 8 byte, is there in the most significant byte location. This is how the bytes are arranged in the Little Indian byte ordering mechanism. Now let's look at the Big Indian byte ordering mechanism. The Big Indian byte order put the byte whose ordering, you look at this ordering, this is the least significant byte, at the most significant position of the word, that is at the big end. The least significant byte is at the little end in a Little Indian addressing, and in the Big Indian addressing, the least significant byte is at the big end or the most significant position of the word. So now let's look at, this is my word. This is my word, and this is the least significant position of my word. This is the least significant position of my word. This is the most significant position. So here also this was the LSB, the least significant byte, and here the MSB, the most significant byte. So here also this is the least significant byte, and here is the most significant byte. So in case of a Big Indian addressing, the least significant byte, the address of the least significant byte, this is the address of the least significant byte, is there in the most significant position of the word. This is the most significant position of the word, and the most significant byte is there in the least significant position of the word. Now, if your machine has Little Indian byte ordering and machine can have a Big Indian byte ordering, so will there be any problem in the ordering of the bytes within a object? Now let's take a, so I have left with 2 minutes, so probably it's not possible to explain, but let's, in the next class we'll explain the Little Indian addressing, Big Indian addressing, and what is the issues in the Little Indian addressing and the Big Indian addressing.
Sir.
Sir.
Yeah.
Yes. Sir.
Yes.
Sir, actually, sir, I was confused in Little Indian. Suppose means 32 byte object is having address 801, 802, 803
Okay.
and
No, actually, I had an example to explain. So next class I will explain all the details. So you had a byte, how this byte will be stored. I had an example.
okay, sir.
Next class I will explain you with an example. So you can leave the team and join in the next class.